Welcome to the Visibility Brief, a Yext series where we sit down with business leaders to explore how AI is transforming customer discovery. I'm Rebecca Colwell, SVP of Marketing at Yext, and today I'm joined by our COO, Yvette Martinez-Rea, for a candid conversation about how to lead teams and organizations through disruption. Welcome.
I'm very glad to be here. You're one of my favorite people to talk to about anything, really. So
Thank you. That's lovely. Well, I'm so excited to chat with you because you have so much experience driving change, major change at organizations. And I guess the very first question is, how disruptive is this AI transformation compared to other things you've seen in the past?
Oh boy. So I am in my 50s, and I started my career when ISPs were first coming on the market, when you used to have to get a DVD and put it in your computer and plug your computer, you remember, into the wall and the thing.
Yeah.
So that, just to give you context of how long I've been in tech and around tech. So I think in that time period, there's been at least four. If you think about the internet itself, e-commerce, you could kind of count as the mobile platform, the cloud transformation, and now this. And all of those have been hugely transformative. And I don't even just mean for business. I mean for shifting consumer behavior, right? Customer and consumer behavior. You and I live our very different lives than we lived 25 years ago because of all of that. So I would say this one is absolutely on that order of magnitude, but I think it's going to be even bigger. I really do. And I think it's going to be faster. That's my gut.
That's what it feels like right now.
Yeah.
I just think about a year ago
Yeah.
and how we were sort of flirting with the idea of AI disrupting, and now it is absolutely everywhere.
Yeah.
In these times that you have led through transformation, what are the things that people tend to underestimate about those changes?
In my experience, I think generally businesses wait too long to begin to lean into a transformative moment. And I think that's natural. I think, it's hard to disrupt ourselves until there's a force that's strong enough that we can't ignore it any longer. So I would say that's the thing generally I have experienced. I also think people underestimate the complexity and the time it takes to fully transform yourself as an organization and have that permeate all the way down to the every level. Almost always, I think you think it's going to happen faster and it's going to be easier than it actually is.
So for a leader who's facing down this transformation right now, where should they focus first?
Themselves. Like any good leader, I think you have to start with assessing your own level of engagement with a new technology, a shift. You have to assess your own level of discomfort versus your curiosity about it. You've got to assess sort of, where am I on the spectrum of the feeling I need to have to lead the change. I think you have to start with that inventory. And then I think you have to do an inventory that says, the framework I have always in my head is, I think about the signals I need to be paying attention to when I'm thinking about change. And that's customers, candidates, competitors, and culture. And so I go through this process when I'm thinking about, okay, there's these signals happening, and I start to look for when those signals are starting to intersect, right? And so that tells me a lot of okay, what do we need to do? Is it time to move? And the one that makes sense to people always is customers, right? You start to see your customers are doing different things, asking different things. Competitors is also an obvious one. Okay, how are they starting to shift what they're doing, position, et cetera? The ones that people don't think about very often are candidates. And what I mean by that is, what are the people that you're attracting and bringing into your organization? What are they asking you? Why are they coming? What are the things that they are hoping to learn from your organization as you start to hear some of the changes there? So when I have people come in now and they're asking about, what are you guys doing as it relates to AI? Well, I know that it's time for us to have a good answer to that, right? And then the last thing is culture, right? What is the culture? What is that message out, as you know, as a marketer? What is that message out in the water, right, that is getting to everybody out there? And how intense is that intensity growing? So I try to listen to all of those things to sort of figure out a place to start.
That's incredible. I love that. The 4 C's.
Yeah.
What makes driving change inside of an organization so challenging?
Because there's people involved. It's true. Actually, and it's not just about change. Look, the reality is everybody says like, oh, if I just have the right product market fit and I have a great strategy and I have a great marketing campaign, everything should go so well, right? But what you forget is there's humans. Companies are just organisms that are made up of a lot of humans, and humans are fragile and complex beings. And we put them all together and we expect that, if we have the right PowerPoint presentation and all hands and that they're all going to lock into exactly what they need to do and then they're going to go do it without a lot. That's just not reality. And we know that just from running the business day to day. So then you layer on top of that the thing that humans hate more than anything, and that's change. They hate it because it makes them fundamentally uncomfortable that there is some sort of future state that they don't totally understand and they don't feel totally comfortable and confident in. And so now you're asking them not only to do their day-to-day job, but now you're asking them to consider this kind of fuzzy future and to drive towards that future. And that future usually feels somewhat threatening to them. And it's mostly just because they don't understand it. But so now, you're putting that on them. That's a really hard thing to ask. And then so you have to think about, okay, great, I have to ask them to get comfortable with this unknown future. And now I've got to break that down not only into the things that are going to motivate them to do it, but that then is going to trigger all sorts of other changes, right? It's going to trigger changes in the processes we run. It might trigger changes in the vendors we use. It might trigger changes in our compensation practices, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a lot of moving pieces. So, but mostly it starts because you've got humans who, by nature, even if they don't intend to be resistant, just tend to be.
So you are really good at finding people inside the org who are more open to change. I've noticed. So how do you find these change agents?
It's important, I think, for me, fundamentally my job comes down to understanding the system of the company and understanding the places where that system is working well and the places where it isn't. So by virtue of that, I'm always scanning the organization for that. And what happens is often I'm asking a lot of questions. And what I find is the people who are usually the more candid, but also positive, or are giving me highlights of problems or opportunities, but they're doing it in a very sort of solution-oriented way, those people stick in my mind a lot. The people that make time to come and ask questions or to actually they're naturally curious about what's happening or something, those people stick in my mind. Also, people will tell you. If you come to somebody and you say, hey, who in your organization do you go to when you're trying to figure out how to do a new thing? Who's the person who's always cheerleading the team? You can ask those questions and then the same names will start to pop up over and over again, and then it becomes pretty easy.
Amazing.
Yeah. Probably the first group of people that I get close to when I join a company is to figure out who that set of EAs are that are working for all the functional teams and leaders, because they are the keepers of the calendars, they're the keepers of the events, they're the keepers of they know what's going on, and they know kind of everybody's personalities and who likes what for lunch, and all of that stuff is really important. So I would say they're almost always really key change levers in an organization.
Oh, great tip.
Yeah.
I'll keep that in mind. When you are trying to drive change inside of an organization, what are some of the more resistant behaviors that you tend to see?
Oh, yeah. So it's the resistance that's the hardest, I would say, to address is not overt resistance. It's the I'm hiding from the change by putting my head down. I'm doing my work, but I'm really not engaging. I'm not resisting, but I'm really not leaning into it because it's a little scary or I'm uncomfortable. That's harder to suss out. It's much easier to suss out initially the people that are like, this is stupid and I don't want to do it. It's the people that don't say anything that kind of sneak back into the back of the photo, that you don't. I think that can be harder to suss out. The people that resist change the most are the people who perceive it to be threatening to their identity. At the end of the day, it's not so much people are like, I think that strategy is a bad idea. It's that then they extrapolate that from this change. Right now, when I come to a department and I say, I want to see us lean into how would we do marketing in an AI first world if we were building a marketing function today? forget everything we've ever done. How would we do it today? I find that to be a very energizing question.
Yes.
But I'm not in that department doing those things today. The person who's going to resist that change is the person who, when they imagine it, they say, I might not be needed anymore in that. Or my thing that I really enjoy doing, which is, writing beautiful copy, might be done by a machine. Does that mean I'm no longer relevant? What I feel good about every day? So my identity is going to be threatened by this. That's where the resistance is going to come. So I think one of the things as a leader is you want to anticipate that. You want to say, where is this going to threaten someone's identity? And how do I either be really candid about it and say, hey, yeah, this might mean that we don't need this role anymore, and let's talk about what the future role could be for you, et cetera. Or say, hey, I know you're thinking about it that way, but let's think about it a different way. Maybe you actually are going to be the person who's going to teach the next generation of marketers how to do creative work using these tools.
Right.
So you help them reshape their identity.
It's amazing. So that's how you're creating the psychological safety for them to explore this change.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You make such a great point, especially around like the impact on a copywriter, for example. And when I think about the impact of AI, the marketing department feels especially impacted by this change. So, any advice for me as the leader over marketing for how I can help guide the team through this change and help them feel confident and safe?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, you and I have talked about this, that marketing is always on the leading edge of the change of any kind of change in an organization, and needs a lot of resilience and flexibility in how it thinks about doing its work because of that. And for a company like us that is, rethinking positioning or bringing new products to market and new tools are available, and that I'm going to be coming to you and saying, walk me through how you're investing your dollars in this new world. Walk me through this tech stack you have and whether or not that's still the right one. Walk me through it, et cetera. So I think the best advice I can give you is to lean into that, right? To adopt your own identity as a change leader, right? You are a marketing leader, but you are a transformational leader as well. And that some percentage of your time every day has to be split between the day-to-day strategic priorities that you're trying to drive, and some part of your brain has to be reserved for how do I lay out a roadmap for a future that is going to look different than this one, and then actively come to me and others and say, I want to have this conversation. Here's how I'm thinking about the future. What do you think? What are going to be the sensitive points for the company about where you want to see us go? So that's the first thing, is like lean into that conversation. Mm-hmm. Don't wait for me to come knock on the door. But the second thing is, I would say, I find it, and I think you're the same kind of leader, employees want to be invited into those conversations. They want candor. They want to be engaged, even if you don't have all the answers. Obviously, it'd be great if we had everything perfectly mapped out all the time, but that's not true. But I would say just openly engage your team on, hey, guys, what are you thinking as you see what's happening out there? What are your friends and other businesses doing? What are you worrying about or excited about? Adopt a posture of allowing the team to experiment and play and pilot. I think that's the best way to get your team engaged in transformational change, is to say, hey, let's get together for a day and brainstorm all the work we don't like doing, and that we think we would love it if somebody else would do for us. Yeah. And could we start, having some ways that we experiment with doing that? I think that to me is injecting that sort of fun and energy is a really great way to start to get the team to buy in.
I love that. That resilience piece is something I often talk to my nieces and nephews about, mm-hmm. as well. Like, the world is going to keep changing very, very quickly in these very unpredictable ways. And the best thing we can do is to be flexible and adaptable.
You know what bugs me about when people talk about like, oh, we need to develop resilience? I'm like, as a human, you are a resilience machine. You already are. You today are a resilience machine. All of us are, right? Because, think about, like, you went from not being able to walk to walking to running. You went from not being able to read to reading novels. You went from, not, being in elementary school to going to college. Like, all of those change. Like, if you just actually stop and think about all those major, major developmental change, transformational change moments that we have all survived. And don't even start with moving houses or, something tragic happening in your family, or good and bad. We are constantly constantly adapting to change in our lives. And somehow we don't think we are. But like, I think when you characterize that for people, it's like you are already a resilience machine. Lean into the fact that you are, as opposed to think it's something you're going to develop down the road.
Thank you for that. I'm feeling very inspired right now.
Well, it's true.
I love it. No, it's so true.
I think the
It's so
question
true.
we really have to ask ourselves is not about becoming resilient. It's, are my tools for managing the discomfort good enough? What do I need to do as a human or as a team or as an organization to have better ways to manage the discomfort of it? What we're resisting is the discomfort. We're never resisting the change. We're resisting the discomfort. So like, do I have the tools? Do I need better ways to manage that feeling of discomfort that's going to pop up? And the answer usually is no. And that's where I would focus the attention.
You've given us some really great advice about what to do. Are there certain things leaders should avoid doing? Like, what's the one thing you should not do in a time of change like this?
Oh, you should definitely not jump in. Well, you shouldn't panic, first of all. Like, don't panic. But you really, the mistakes I've made, they come down to a couple of things. One is when I think I know best, or, you know, we haven't spent enough time listening and really getting in and making sure and testing that the idea we have of the shift we want to make.
Looking back, is there an experience you've had in the past that has changed the way you've thought about change?
I'll tell you my very first where I was responsible for an acquisition. It was actually the company that of the boss we now work for. We had made the acquisition. We were a big company, and I was responsible for the integration, which is just a big change effort, right? For that, especially for the company that's being acquired. And I made a really big mistake, which is what I did not understand the whole thing about identity at the time. And that people really get threatened by identity change. So this team was already going through identity change because we were getting rid of their brand. We were, pulling them into this bigger company. So they were already on edge. And then I made a bunch of decisions about how quickly that brand was going to go away. I made a bunch of decisions about literally physically changes to their office space. We were going to keep their office, but we were going to move people around. I made all of those decisions without talking to anybody. These, in my mind, were not consequential decisions. They were not product decisions. They were not go-to-market decisions. They were not, and because of that, I thought they were no big deal. They were actually the worst possible thing I could have done, because what I did is I disrespected them as people and didn't understand the threat to their identity. And then any other change we wanted to drive after that, we were really starting from a negative place, because I had failed to sort of really weigh in and consider all of that. So I would say that was a lesson at that point, where I was like, going forward, that I have to start from a position of respect, curiosity, listening, integrating all of that before we start pushing for a bunch of change.
You talked about you were moving quickly.
Mm-hmm.
How do you balance the need to push for things quickly with the need to like slow down and let people catch up?
Oh, it is tricky. I think, gosh, I wish I had some like really simple rule for that. I would say there's two things. One is you constantly have to put what you're asking for in context of the longer term vision, so that when you're asking for urgency and it's making people uncomfortable, hopefully they can ground it in, there's a purpose to this. This isn't just a random thing I'm asking for. And I think that helps a little bit. But I think the other thing is, sometimes you just, as a leader, have to go with your gut. And you have to say, I am willing to break this. I don't think it'll actually break, but I'm willing to take the risk that I'm going to break this in order to then be able to put it back together in a new way, and that trade-off is worth it. And that it's hard to teach someone how to get to a point in your career or in your place where you know how to do that, but there is an element of, a lot of times I try to appreciate that I'm in a position by virtue of my role where I can make those trade-off calls, and I need to sometimes do that and then absorb the potential impact of that, because otherwise what will happen is we will circle, because of the risk that people perceive, we'll circle rather than move forward. And so sometimes that probably is how I quote unquote balance it, is sometimes I just come in and say, well, we're gonna roll the dice on this one.
And you do an exceptional job at that.
Oh,
No, truly, I think we cannot imagine driving, through this organizational change without you at the helm. So
thank you.
thank you so much. This was a wonderful conversation. And we'd love to have you back again soon.
Anytime.
Thank you.